Um, sorry, I don't have a face cam. This stream is basically gonna be about what every new player in CROWFALL needs to learn at some point to get a great start in the game. And I'm just gonna go through the agenda as you can see on stream. We're gonna go through what to do when you first log in. We have some optimization stuff you can do yourself. Then we're gonna look at how you choose your first character, and then we're gonna look at the basics of the game. Oh, there's the in the basics of the game. Okay, it went a bit fast. Who cares? Then we're gonna look at how leveling works in the game, because you need to get to max level to actually enjoy the game. And then finally, what to do at max level. With me in Discord, I have a new guild in CROWFALL called Uganda. I'm just gonna unmute myself here. And these new players have played maybe a week, and they will be asking a lot of questions during the stream and after the stream, obviously, after the agenda is done. And if anything is unclear, since these are completely new players, they will speak out and ask me to explain it a bit better. Uganda. All right. So we are just gonna start. Let's start from the top then. Right. So what to do when you first log in? The reason I wrote Boot.config file is because there's a file that a member of the community that has made that changes some of the settings in your Boot.config file in your CROWFALL folder. And those settings actually improve your performance, both when you're, when there's no one around, but also most importantly, it improves your performance when you get into fights, because CROWFALL is not that well optimized yet. So any FPS you can gain in big fights is gonna help you immensely. So I'm just gonna quickly show you how to use this boot config file. Oh, my desktop. So I'm just gonna link here in the chat. There's a link here to the boot config file. You press it, you download the file, and then you do what I do. You have the boot config file here. You go to your CROWFALL live. You open file placement. You go into download. You go into CROWFALL client data. And here you can see there's already a boot config file here. And then you just replace it. Easy. Now you have more FPS, it both helps low-end computers and also helps high-end computers. And yeah, let's now jump into the game. So I'm gonna put this one up again. I'm gonna log into the game quickly. Not that fast. If you need to, if it goes too fast, you can just rewatch the VOD, and I'll, then you can take it at your own speed. All right. Clip it. All right. So the first thing you see when you get into the game is you see three tabs here. You see Eternal Kingdoms, which are the player worlds. Everyone has their own little world called an Eternal Kingdom. They start out with 12 slots of players, so this is basically where if you want to test something against your friends, or if you want to have some small scrims against each other, this is where you go in, and then you can choose to put PvP on, and you can build stuff in there. Then we have the Guard's Reach. This is where everyone starts out leveling. You can see here it says Starter World for new players. And they say players can reach level 20 in a few hours. That's pretty much correct. Then we have the campaign, and this is where the end game stuff happens. Right now there's a campaign running where it's guild versus guild rule set, which means every guild can then attack everyone else outside their guild. Alright, so the first thing you do when you get into the game is you want to go into Guard's Reach. So you press enter on the Guard's Reach, and then because we have something called passive skill training, which actually skills up over real time, the first thing you should do is you go into your skill training and then start training. You have 2 tracks here, one primary track and one secondary track. And that means you can only train, 2 things at a time. You can't go 2 times into combat. And in my case, I went into combat because my main account here, I PvP a lot on it. So all you have to do is start training. It would then look like this instead, that you select it and then it starts training. And then every some seconds you can see you gain 1 point. And then it just slowly accumulates points over time. And then you just, every day you log in, you spend your points. You can see here I went down to, this is in the combat tree, I went down to the right, where I always prefer to go defensive first. So all these talents right here, they increase, you can then hold left control while mousing over a talent, you can see what it does. So example, this one increases my armor and resistances. And as a rule of thumb, new players should always go defensive first, because it's easier to understand the game if you don't die as fast. And in my secondary track, I've gone exploration, which is basically, you can see here, it's basically the harvesting way, but there are also some stuff to gain for combat. So for example, in here you also gain access to the epic mount. You can see if it says train 5 pips, and you gain access to swift saddles, which is the epic mount of the game, which is the fastest movement speed. So this is where you obviously want to go if you do combat, because if you have a fast mount and your enemy don't have a fast mount, you can run him up, kill him, loot him, easy clap. And then there's also some other talents that improves your combat here, like this one. You can have 1 second less cooldown on your dodge, and yeah. Then when you progress further, you can see some of the trees here are locked, and it would tell you what you need to do to progress into those trees. In my case, I want to go into the command tree here, because in the command tree you gain a passive power, which then increases the stats of your entire group. And I need 75% of my exploration basics trained, and right now you can see I have 16%, so that's some way to go. Reaching the end of the skill trees will take a lot of time. As you can see, it's like 1 point every 10 seconds or something like that. And some points cost, when the points increase in cost every time you get further into the skill trees. Right, so you've started your skill training, and just a sec. You start your skill training, and now let's make sure you also have some decent graphic settings. Because as I said, the game is not fully optimized, so every little thing you can do to tinker with is gonna improve your performance and gonna improve your overall, you know, experience with the game. If you're watching the VOD, you know, just pause the video and then copy my settings. These settings works really well for me. I have VSync turned off, graphics quality medium, all the extra stuff turned off, no shadows. You know, I don't care how the game looks for me. I only want performance. And these are my culling settings. So culling is how much shit is on your screen at the same time, you know, from animations. I experienced if I took the culling setting here, FX culling, if I took that below 250, then I couldn't see basic attacks anymore. You know, so I couldn't see where arrows came from or fireballs from ranged guys or something like that. So I kind of want to see that. You can, of course, then, you know, tinker with it yourself and see what suits you the best. And then lastly, we have some other menu points up here. We have the purchases, and this is mainly for the Eternal Kingdoms. If you want to try and build stuff yourself, this is where you then, everyone gets these testing copies. You mark them and then you import them into your bank. And then you can retrieve them in your bank, which is here in the vault. And the vault up here is basically your account bank, right? It has 200 slots. It doesn't say how many there is, but there is maximum of 200 slots. And these banks are also connected to the different campaigns you've been competing in. So as you can see here, this was the recent campaign, Yeralon. And you have a certain amount of import tokens and export tokens. And then depending on how many export tokens you have, you can then bring stuff out of that campaign and into your account bank here, and then sell it in the player-run worlds, like in the EKs. The account vault is connected to the Eternal Kingdoms, and it's connected to the God's Reach and the Infected. So these three servers, they don't have any import-export limit, and you can then freely transfer stuff between them. Where, as you can see here, if I go into the campaign, it says here there's always some different rules depending on what campaign it is. And this one says embargo active. There's by default no import tokens. So all the stuff that you have in your account vault for this campaign, you can't bring back into the campaign. So you basically, this campaign, everyone starts out naked, and then you have to go out and farm your gear. And that's, you know, that's a lot of fun for some people. It's maybe not a lot of fun for new players starting out with 0 if you just farmed up some stuff in God's Reach. But that's how the game is, you know. Sometimes the rules are different depending on the campaign. And every campaign is, you know, unique in the sense that it lasts a certain amount of time, and then when the campaign is over, there's a winner declared, and, you know, that's basically, you know, you compete for a set amount of time. You can see this one has 10 days left and 13 hours. And if we look at the map, we're gonna look at this later, obviously. There's a campaign scoreboard, and it's also a, you know, kill death scoreboard. You can see some of the guilds here. You know, if you want to flash your EP in, this is where you go in and screenshot and send it to your friends. Yeah. But I'm gonna explain this obviously later. So let's get to the next part here. Choosing your first character. Before going any further, Uganda score 0. Uganda guys, do you have any questions to the first part here? Skill training, graphics, etc. Or it's pretty much self-explanatory, right?
No, Megalo.
There's like one part where
you could have chosen like fucking in the settings, right?
Yeah.
Like there's best performance, and you chose fucking balance. Is there a reason for that, or it's just I don't know.
Also under the client performance here.
Occlusion culling or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just have it unbalanced. This is what, you know, gave me the best performance. Obviously.
So best performance doesn't give best performance. I see.
Yeah, that's the same with, you know, medium or basic. In the past, actually, medium was the most optimized.
Okay, I
And
see.
yeah, exactly.
Also, other question: do the passive points like create on their own even when offline? Because I'm not sure. Like the fucking passive 3 points, right?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I just had to turn you up.
The passive 3 points, are they like generating even though your PC is not on, or?
Yeah, exactly. They generate in real time. So that's why it's the first thing you want to do when you get into the game is you start accumulating points, because then you can basically go to bed and, you know, wake up the next day when you get home from work or whatever. Then you can go in and spend all the points that accumulated during the day. And all these, you know, all the stuff you train in here, it transfers to every single world you play in, every single character, etc. Right? So it's your account points.
Alright. That's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next part. I'm gonna mute myself on Discord again. All right. So yeah, as Captain Tryhard says, you can accumulate up to 30 days worth of passive training before you reach the cap, and then, you know, it won't accumulate further. That's why, you know, as a rule of thumb, just when you get in every day, spend your points, and then you'll never have that problem. All right. So you are gonna choose your first character. And by creating character, you press on one of the new character slots here. As you can see, I already have some characters because I've been playing the game. But we create a new character. And in the left side, you can see all the races. And on the right side, you can see the classes that are available to those races. And I'm just quickly going to go through every single race and every single class, giving you the information that makes sense, because you actually don't get much information about the game in the character screen, which I'm pretty sure the developers are working on, so you actually get some more information. But for this, I've prepared some pictures. Ooh. Alright, so each race has some unique bonuses, and some get powers, you know, some get, everyone gets some like passive bonuses and some powers. And then obviously you want to mix and match those races and classes depending on your preferred playstyle. So for example, the Centaur here has a charge that also breaks armor. So you reduce the armor by 20% of your enemies when you hit them with that charge. That obviously works well with being a champion, because champion does physical damage, as an example, right? Yeah, thank you, Rufio. If you clip that, that would be cool to post. Okay. Or you can send it to me in Discord, and I'll post it later. Fucking cold eyes of Centaur. Yeah. All right. So right. Let's get to it. I'm gonna explain the races first. You can see here. This is not, I didn't press a button somewhere and then the bonuses popped up. This is a picture I've prepared. Oh. So this is actually what you see on the screen on the right side is the racial discipline for a class, for a race, sorry. When you get into the game, you can go into your disciplines tab, and then this one pops up, right? So the Centaur, as you can see, gets some. Let me just increase the size here so I can fucking read it. Alright, so every race has some different stat caps. So that's the maximum amount of stats they can reach. And they have some racial bonuses. So you can see in the case of the Centaur, it has extra constitution. Then they get some passive powers. You can see those are the icons that are gray and white. And then they get some powers they can actually use in game. Those are normally colored. And you can see in this case, the Centaur has a wild charge, as I explained earlier. It charges into people, pushes them away, and breaks their armor, giving them a debuff, 20% armor break. And it also has a rear kick, which is the power you can use, and it knocks down 5 targets behind you. So you can run up to a guy and do a 180 and then kick him in the face and knock him down. It's quite fun. Every race also has a certain type of dodge. You can see the Centaur here has a dash, and depending on the race, the dodge can either be 20 meters or 10 meters. If the race has a 20-meter dodge, you only have 1 dodge on a cooldown. If the race have a 10-meter dodge, you have 2 dodges, 2 dodge pips that you then can use on cooldowns, on 10-second cooldown. So 20-meter dodge, 1 pip, 20-second cooldown, 10-meter dodge, 2 pips, 10-second cooldown per pip. And you can see some of the passives here. Hungry as a horse. This guy requires a lot more food to not go hungry. Trailmaster, he runs faster by default, and sure-footed, you can't get demounted, or you have a hard time getting demounted by getting damaged. Let's go to the next one, the Elken here. So the Elken gets more strength, constitution, and you can see this guy has some a passive power called tanning techniques. So also some different races have bonuses towards crafting in the game. And obviously, if you want to make a leather worker, you make an Elken, because he already by default has bonuses to leatherworking. The Elken also gets a charge called Headbutt, as you can see. Headbutt, you knock up people at the end of the charge, and you charge 20 meters. He also gets something called Gestalt, which is anti-stealth. You pop that, and you can see stealth enemies nearby. And this guy has 2 10-meter dodges in the form of the dive roll. And I guess I should also just quickly show the races available. Classes available to the races. Every race have a different amount of classes available. You can see the Centaur only has 3 classes available. Elken has a bit more diverse. Yeah. The Fae. This is the edgy boy of the game. You can see it can be Assassin, Druid, Frostweaver, Knight. And the Fae gets bonus Dexterity, bonus Intellect. The cool part about the Fae is that they have a double jump, as you can see in the passive powers. They can jump up in the air and then jump another jump in the air. And then they can also glide by... You turn out on glide by pressing jump once. So your spacebar, while you're in the air. Yep. Let's go to the next one, Guinecean. Our little hamsters. This race is the only race that can be the class Duelist, because the Duelist burrows on the ground and shoots people with pistols. So yeah. Furries. You can see the racial bonuses here. If you're not a Duelist, but you're a Cleric, and the Guinecean, you get the burrow ability, so you can go underground and being stealth, but only out of combat. So you can use it to sneak up to people while being a knight or a cleric, and then pop out and smack them in the head with a hammer or something. The Guinecean by default gets a bit more weapon damage, so they're pretty decent early game, where weapon damage is not that high. Late game, 8 weapon damage doesn't make that big of a difference. So in terms of damage, other races overtake the Guinecean if they, for example, were a knight. The Guinecean, well, the Guinecean only have a single dodge, 20 meters. Yeah. Half-elf, they can only be 3 classes. Half-elf is pretty popular right now. In the past, they used to be like the worst race, but recently they got changed to now have that passive power you can see called Wildking's Retort. Every time they receive any form of CC, they will heal up 6% of their maximum health over 4 seconds. So in group fights, you will always get some form of CC. Either you get slowed, or you get hit by a knockdown, or you get hit by a root, or anything, and that will just passively heal you through the entire fight. This race is a very popular choice for example, the Stormcaller Druid, because the Stormcaller Druid don't really have any defensives by themselves. So having that extra passive healing from the racial goes really well. Let's go to the half giant. Yeah, you can see this is a big boy or a strong woman. They only have three classes. They mainly play bruisers, champion or Myrmidon, and they can also be healers, obviously. There we go. These are the typical smog guys, go in, smack people. You can see they gain a lot of constitution, which is health, and strength, which is, damage bonuses. These guys have some really cool racials in the form of Make Me Mad, where if you take a lot of small hits during a fight, you will gain 5 stacks of Make Me Mad, and then you increase in size, and you gain like 5% damage bonus for 30 seconds. It also has a Blood of the Giant, which is also accumulated through fighting. Then you can pop the Blood of the Giant, you increase further in size, and also gain more damage bonus. So basically, this race have racials that can increase your damage bonus by up to 15%, while also increasing in size. And then they have a power called Backhand, as you can see here in the bottom. It's a melee range stun. Let's go to the High Elf. This is also a very popular race right now, mainly due to Confessor being really strong and Frostweaver being okay, but mainly Confessor. The reason they're so popular is if you look at the acrobatics passive up here, they passively gain a free dodge pip. So every 30 seconds you have an extra dodge roll, and mobility is pretty key in PvP, so that's why they're so popular. Yumx, can you say happy birthday, Gore? Happy birthday, Gore. And welcome to, I was about to say Uganda, but I mean CROWFALL. Alright. Human. Human used to be the, super race in the past, but with the recent changes, they have become one of the least played races, actually. The reason they were so played in the past is because you can see they unlock a well, it's doesn't say here, but they used to have extra power bar slots, but now everyone has 10 power bar slots, you know, where you can slot your skills. So that advantage has been nullified from the human. So now they are working on, you know, making some better ratios for the human. Let's go to the next one. This is also a very smog race. The Minotaur. They also play mainly bruisers, you know, champion and Myrmidon. They can also play ranger. It's not a very popular choice though, playing Minotaur ranger. Hero's Blood with the passive, yeah. So here you can see the ratios. They also gain some extra health, they gain some dexterity. The cool part about the Minotaur is that they have the passive called Unbreakable, which you can see it right here, which makes them, they are immune to stun crowd control from the front. So if you always look at people when you fight them, you can't get stunned. And it's really good against, for example, the Duelist Guinecean here that has 2 pistols. Their main damage form is a frontal cone stun. So if you play a Minotaur against a Duelist, you know, you have that advantage. And this is why, you know, choices actually matter when you create your character, and why I'm going through all these races and classes is because, you know, you might end up one day getting your ass beat by a team with a lot of Duelists. Okay, maybe we should switch some of our characters over to Minotaurs, because then we can't get crowd controlled by their main form of crowd control. Unbreakable doesn't apply to knockdown. No, it's only stuns. Only stuns. If it was both knockdown and stuns, that would be a bit too OP. Yeah, and then you can see they get a power called Bloodthirst, where you heal up some of the damage you take for a certain amount of time, and then all that damage gets turned into a dot on you afterwards. So that power is obviously good to pop if you jump into an enemy force as a melee character, and then your healers have a chance to pick you back up because it's a dot on you, right? They also have a charge, because, you know, why bulls they charge, right? Which is a super cool charge. You charge 20 meters into people, you can control the charge while you're charging, and then you knock people down at the end of it. Just go 5 Minotaurs, Pit Fighter. Yeah, that is a very popular choice for champions right now, going Minotaur. Alright. Next race here, Nethari. Okay, they look this. They also only have 3 classes to play: Assassin, Confessor, Templar. They're not played that much anymore. You can see they have some. I mean, they have a pretty cool racial where they have increased stealth speed, but since assassins are poo-poo, assassins are not very great in group fights, then, you know, there's no real reason to play this race, basically. They used to be the #1 race for playing Confessor, because back then they would have 2 times 20 meters dodges, but now with the changes to dodges, they only have one dodge pip 20 meters, right? So the mobility got nerfed, and then it's just better to play high elf, for example, if you play a squishy range DPS. Let's go to the Stoneborn. There's strong boy here. For some reason I think it looks like a orangutan when it runs, but maybe that's just me. This is actually a popular race choice right now, and the reason it's a popular race choice is one is the Blood of the Mountain passive, where you just get more healing. You have a personal healing modifier that is increased by default, and this one, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You increase healing and damage done after being knocked down, right? So if you get CC'd, you basically get buffed as a Stoneborn. And then they also have the stone skin here, like a shield wall. If you know that from other games, you take reduced reduced damage. You're immune to poisons, but you also the incoming healing is lower as well. And then finally, the last race here, the Wood Elf, which also used to be a very popular choice in the past. Because of their dodge, the racial dodge, they have, oh god, looks like a real chat. Their dodge is basically a blink, right? They don't have any travel time when they dodge, so that is very useful for confusing your enemies. So blinking through enemies, you know, suddenly they have to turn around to try and find you. They have recently been nerfed in the sense that they only have one dodge because it's 20 meters, as I explained before. But they are still, you know, a popular choice for healers because they have that extra spirit, as you can see up here. And since both Druid and Frostweaver can play healers, you know, that's normally the go-to race if you want to play either of these classes as healer. That's Dubby. Yeah, that was Dubby, for sure. Alright, so that was the races. If it went too fast, you know, watch the VOD, go back and see what I explained. And now I'm just quickly gonna go through the classes. So I'm gonna take them, you know, in alphabetical order. The races I choose to show the classes, you know, it doesn't matter for this part. I'm just gonna quickly explain what the assassins can branch into, because every class has 3 promotion class choices, and you can only choose 1 per character. And you can see the assassin here, for example. They can branch into Cutthroat, which is high melee damage. You're basically like a stealth glass cannon. They can branch into Blackguard, which is a more tanky version of the assassin. You gain access to mail armor. By default, the assassin has leather armor. And then they can branch into Vandal, which is melee control. You gain some more crowd control, so you can lock down people, single target. Production value, lads. Yeah, I actually spent some time preparing pictures, right? But as I said, the assassin is not played that much in group fights because they are a bit too squishy and have a bit too much single target stuff compared to, like, if you play in a 50 versus 50 fight. You know, single target is not that great. You kind of want some AoE, unless of course you make like spec groups that try and, you know, gank ranged enemy DPS in the back or something like that. But they are basically, you know, a lot of new players like the assassin because it reminds them of maybe a rogue from World of Warcraft or other games, but it's not that. They need a balance pass at some point. Let's take a look at the champion here. The champion can branch into a melee DPS, which is called the Alpha Warrior. They have really good burst. You jump in and then you use your ultimate called Neckbreaker, which is a 5-target AoE knockdown burst around you. It looks super cool. The only thing you have to watch out for if you play an Alpha Warrior is that you're pretty squishy, because you only have mail armor. So the normal playstyle for that is you jump in with the jump power you get as being a champion, then you burst people, and then you know get out again of the fight, go back to your healers and wait for your stuff to be ready. Because it's very easy to just turn on a champion like that if they're not careful. Then we have the Pit Fighter. Which weapons? Oh yeah, sorry, let me explain the weapons quickly. Let's just go back to the assassin real quick. Assassin uses daggers and, you know, one-handed weapons, daggers, maces, and axes. The champion here uses two-handed weapons, not two-handed sword, but two-handed mace, two-handed axe. And then, you know, you just basically go in and bash people's head in, right? They also have a promotion class called Pit Fighter. So, you know, this is a tank version of the champion. You gain access to plate armor. You gain a lot more mitigation. You gain a lot more self heal. And this is the type of build where you jump into the enemies and then you stay in there and just bully them. You don't do super high damage, but you do enough like debuffs and slows and stuff to annoy people. And you know, and that's basically the job as a frontline in CROWFALL, is that, you know, try and attract the enemy's attention, so your backline DPS, they can wreck the enemies and do what they want. And then we have the Barbarian, which is not played that much, but it's you know, a build where you gain a lot more control. But if you're playing the champion, the Alpha Warrior or the Pit Fighter, you know, just outperforms the Barbarian in group fights. And yeah, so as I said earlier, every class kind of have like 3 promotion classes they can go into where they specialize in a role, right? So damage, tank, more control. Let's go to the Cleric here. Elken, for example. Elken Cleric. This is your normal healer. Or is mainly played as healer. You can see you can specialize into ranged DPS, where you smack people with hammers. You can specialize into Crusader, where you're a healer, and it's probably the best starter healer. If you want to heal in CROWFALL, start out with a Cleric. It's a well-rounded healer. It has very high AoE healing and single target healing. And then you can go into Arbiter, which is, you know, it's like a hybrid. At least in late game, you can play this as a hybrid. It has a bit of healing, but then it has more crowd control. Namely, they have a huge AoE root that catches a lot of people. The Cleric uses throwing hammers and shield. You can also see that here from the icon, basically. And that's the only weapons they use: throwing hammer and a small or medium shield. Then we have the Confessor here, which is your fire mage. They have a lot of, in the base kit, you know, they have a lot of damage. They have a lot of AoE crowd control through either like a fire wave or through tornadoes that you send through enemy forces. The Confessor uses a book, and that's the only weapon they use. And they only do fire damage. You can see they specialize into Fanatic, which is, you know, just pure DPS. Lots of DPS. It's a very popular choice as a ranged DPS in this game right now. Or they can specialize into Sanctifier, which turns them into like a melee-ish mage. It's not a very popular choice, though. They gain access to plate armor, but as a frontline, there's just other combinations that can outperform them for what the frontline does. For example, the Pit Fighter. You know, this promotion class doesn't give them any self healing or anything. They just make them take a bit reduced damage. Then we have the Inquisitor, which is the control version of the Confessor. They gain a debuff from the basic attacks, where all elemental damage is increased on enemies they hit. So it's a good choice to have at least one Inquisitor if you in your entire raid, because they can easily debuff enemies, and your ranged DPS that has magic damage can do more damage to them. And the Confessor's ultimate is a vanish. So they stealth for a few seconds, and then it's really easy to reposition that way. That's why it's a very popular choice as ranged DPS, because they're hard to kill. They can just use ulti when they're in trouble, then reposition, and they do high DPS. Then we have the Druid. And the Druid can either go into Stormcaller, which is probably one of the strongest DPS, range DPS right now. They have a really strong AoE damage through Aura Emitter. And depending on the class you play, you use different weapons. So Stormcaller, you use a sickle, a magical sickle, and a small buckler. Or if you're playing Earthkeeper or Archer, you would use a staff instead. So Stormcaller, you just pure DPS. Earthkeeper over here on the left, that's the healing version of the Druid. You place orbs on the ground. People, your teammates can pick them up. And oh boy, someone gave a sub. Thank you. Yeah, you place healing orbs on the ground. You can switch between healing and buffing your team with damage bonuses. It's the cool part about the Druid is they have a mechanic, as you can read here in the bottom if you have it full screen, where it says essence burn. So basically the Druid in either Earthkeeper or Archdruid version, they have two different combat trays. So they have a death tray, which is for damage, and they have a life tray, which is for healing. If you use powers while in life tray, you gain essence, which is, in the Druid's case, that's their mana, so to say. They gain essence. If you reach 80% essence, you start to burn. And if you don't do anything about that, you're going to kill yourself. So to burn essence, you have to go into death tray and then use offensive powers to burn that essence. So juggling between damaging and healing is a pretty cool playstyle, but it requires a bit more practice if you're playing that as a healer compared to the Cleric, where it's just very linear. You just place AoE heals and smack people with hammers. We have the Duelist. As I said here, it's only the Guinecean that can be a Duelist. They can be a full range DPS through the Slayer, and this is a very popular choice right now. The cool part about the Duelist is they are basically a stealth ganker. They by default have a stealth tray, so you can stealth around on the ground, then pop up and shoot people in the head with your pistols. And the cool part about the Slayer is, the Duelist uses combo points. So you shoot people, get 5 combo points, and then you use something called Pepperbox Shot, and then you can stun 5 people in a frontal cone in front of you. And it's also your burst power. So, just naturally while bursting, you are controlling 5 people at a time all the time. So this is why it's a very popular choice as a range DPS. The cool part about them, as I said, they can stealth. That means you can actually have Slayers pop out at an off angle on the enemy range DPS, and you can really cause some havoc through playing a Slayer. The Slayer, the Duelist only uses 2 pistols in case if you want to go ranged, or they use a rapier and a pistol if you want to go melee with the dirge down here. Vanguard Scout is supposed to be a stealth, even though it says melee damage. It's supposed to be a stealth specialization. So you gain like lifesteal while in stealth, and you gain some extra stealth powers. It's not that effective though, so it's not played very much. And then in the end here we have the Dirge, which is a melee tank version of the Duelist. You gain access to plate armor, you have a rapier, and you go in and stab people, and you have a power called Impale, where you stab people and they bleed out. And if you use 5 combo points on Impale, then the target will keep bleeding until they either reach 50% health or get healed up to 100, right? So it's an infinite dot in that sense. Right, let's go to the Frostweaver. So, not long ago, Frostweaver was king. Frostweaver was everything. When Frostweaver was first introduced, they had so much AoE damage from range, exploding ice, that it was just stupid not to play them. And now they actually have reached a more balanced state. Their AoE damage has been reduced. Their mana capabilities have been reduced. In the past, they could just spam AoE. You know, it was a very spammy class. Now you have to think a bit about how you use your how you use your mana. The weapons, they use Frostcasters, so it's like a Frost version of a Wolverine claw. If I didn't explain it, you know, in the name, they are like ice mages. You know, they have 4 different types of ice, and depending on what ice you use, it does something different. So you have a healing ice, you have a mana ice, and you have a trap ice, so to say. You place that on the ground, called frigid ice. If people run into that, they get rooted. If they get hit by multiple, they get knocked down. And then you have a pure damage ice called volatile ice, where you just throw like an exploding ice on people. A lot of people just looked at the nerf to the damage of the AoE on Frostweaver and just completely abandoned it. I would argue that it's still viable, at least in the fights we do, and looking at the damage output. You know, it's still in the high end. It's just not completely broken, right? So instead of critting on 5 people with 2.5k, you know, now you crit maybe 900 or something. But if the health pools are 8,000, 9,000, you know, that sounds more balanced, right? Right, let's get to the promotion classes. So since Frostweaver is the latest or the last class that was introduced, it's a well balanced or well rounded in the sense of choices it has. Archmage is full range DPS. You gain a lot more AoE damage, a lot more damage overall. We have the Frostguard, which is the tank version. The cool part about the Frostguard was that it could buff his teammates with frost armor, and they take reduced damage until the frost armor breaks. They can still do that, but the frost armor has been nerfed with the balance pass, so to say, of the Frostweaver. So they are not used that much anymore because the frost armor just breaks too fast compared to how hard it is to reapply it in a fight. It's the same mechanic as a Druid orb. You place the armor on the ground, and then your teammate has to actively walk over that armor to gain the bonus. And then finally they have the Ice Caller, which is the healer version of the Frostweaver. And the Ice Caller is actually a very popular choice right now, because when you're running around in a guild of 30 people, the Ice Caller can then place healing totems on the ground, and you can spread those totems out over across the battlefield, and you can actually heal your entire raid in that sense. So very popular choice for raid healing. Requires a bit of practice to play, because you have to learn how to weave the ice out and move your totems, so to say, with the fight. Right. And I guess we can just press here on the knight. No, let's do another knight. What's a popular knight? Elken knight is a popular one. Right. We have the knight here. Knight uses a one-hander and a shield. You can also see that from the icon. They use either short swords, one-handed maces, long swords, or one-handed axes. And knights are basically a very control-oriented class by default. They have a super cool power where, thank you for the subs and follows, guys. They have a super cool power where they can pull people towards them, called chain pull, from 30 meters away. So this is a really good front line in the sense that you can go up and then say, okay, get ready to kill this guy, I'm gonna pull him in, and then you pull him in instantly. they get teleported in front of you, and then your team can wreck them. Their ultimate is also like an AoE pull towards yourself, so you jump up in the air and you pull enemy targets towards you. So it all, like as I said, it's a very control oriented class. And holy moly, hype train. Thank you guys. Alright, they can specialize into swordsman, which is a damage version of the knight. You gain a lot more damage. You gain like AoE crit bleed damage, so that's AoE dot damage. And your basic attacks get stronger, basically. You just do a lot more damage, but you're squishy in the sense that you only have mail armor compared to, for example, the Secutor, which is the super tanky version of the knight. They gain access to a tower shield. They gain access to plate armor. They have a lot more damage reduction and barriers. And they also gain more shield powers. And with shield powers, you can reset a power called Shield Bash, and Shield Bash can drain dodge pips from enemies. This is the only class that can drain dodge pips, prevent your enemy from dodging. So it's also a very popular frontline in that sense, a very popular class to have in your raid, because if you pull someone in and remove his dodge pips, how is he gonna get out of your blob? Then you can either force an ultimate through that or force healing cooldowns from the enemy team, right? So overall, like, the knight is a bit of a playmaker, because you just set up the kills for your team. And then finally, the last promotion class is a Sentinel, which is a more control-oriented promotion class. But as I already said, the knight already is control-oriented by default, right? So you don't really need more control. Either you go damage or you go, more tanky, so you can stay in the front for longer. So Sentinel is not played that much. Yeah, whatever it does, you can almost almost do it already by default as a knight. So yeah, it's not played that much. All right, just a second, need some water. Reading the chat meanwhile. Are people do people feel like this is useful? How to apply to a guild? We have a website called vanguardcrowfall.com, but that's not so important right now. Now we're focusing on teaching new players. We need new players in the game, and I'm here to make sure they get a great start. Right. Let's go to the Myrmidon. This is the real smog class, right? You go in and chop people up with two one-handed axes. This is the only weapons they can use, one-handed axes. And they are very much bruisers. They, by default, the Myrmidon has a super cool power called wait. Okay, sorry. They have a super cool power called net pull, where you throw a net on enemies and then you can use that as a combo and then pull them in. So, combining a knight and a Myrmidon, then suddenly you have a lot of pulls and you can just pull people in and kill them, right? Tunnel vision done. Yeah, so for some reason we see a recurring theme with people that play Myrmidons. They like to tunnel vision, just they see red and then they start chopping. They also have a super cool class mechanic where they can absorb damage for a certain amount of time through a power called Berserk. You pop Berserk, then all the incoming damage you take for 8 seconds is healed back up again. So it looks like you're not taking damage, right? But then all that damage is accumulated into one big hit. and that's called the Berserker Crash. Then obviously the Myrmidon has some powers to avoid that crash, either through your ultimate or charging up something called Pulverize. So if you're, good at playing Myrmidon, you can avoid a lot of damage or soak a lot of damage for your team in that sense. Fucking pull, dude. Yeah. So let's go through the promotion classes. Titan is a super popular melee damage right now. They basically, just by attacking targets, they apply bleeds, and then they just stack up damage bonuses by attacking bleeding targets. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they also have a super cool ability called Whirlwind, where you just spin around and bleed up all targets that you hit with Whirlwind. But yeah, Titan, super popular melee damage right now. Super high melee damage if you can connect to targets. Spin to win. Yeah. And then we have the Battle Rager, which is the tank version of the Myrmidon. The only problem with the Battle Rager right now is that you hit like a wet noodle, right? So being a tank, a frontline, it's super good if you can absorb damage, you know, take damage for your team so they don't have to take damage, but you also have to be a threat, right? And that's what the Battle Rager is missing right now. They can absorb a shitload of damage. So if people don't know that you're Battle Rager, you can be super effective because you can absorb damage and then turn all that damage you absorbed into health up to, when you reach the health cap, up to 20,000 health, right? But if people then just ignore you, you can just run there and hit like a noodle, and you don't really do much for your team. So it's not a very popular choice as a Myrmidon. And then we have the Conqueror in the end, which then gains access to more control. When you then play a Conqueror, your Whirlwind, for example, your Spin, you slow targets that you hit that are bleeding, you know, so you can actually just spin through an entire enemy force and slowing people that way. You also, while hitting bleeding targets, you apply a debuff, so it's easier to crit on people. Yeah, the Conqueror equals Beyblade. Basically, you're a Beyblade, right? You spend 90% of your time in combat just spinning around on people. It's one of the easiest builds to play, and one of the easiest builds as a new player, for example, to be effective for your team. You obviously don't want to stack Conquerors, but you would like maybe 1 or 2 Conquerors in your entire raid, because they debuff targets, they control targets, and they make just, make targets easier to kill. And then, as a final note, the Myrmidon also has access to a power called Vengeance, which heals up all the damage you do. And that obviously makes them tanky in the sense that if you can stay offensive and keep doing damage, you're going to be hard to kill because you just keep healing up the damage you do. Which is also why, Titan popular, you do a lot of damage, and if you pop Vengeance, you heal up all the damage, right? Oh yeah, also as a Conqueror, you're immune to crowd control while spinning. So that's also why you spend 90% of your time just spinning around on people. And you can also sprint while spinning, so you can just spin super fast through people. Super easy, super fun to play. Yeah. Let's take a look at the Ranger. Dobby here. The Ranger is your typical hunter class, just without pets. Archer class, I would probably say. You shoot people with bows and arrows, or you stab them when they come close with one-handed melee weapons. In this case, the Ranger has access by default to a ranged tray and a melee tray. So as a Ranger in fights, you switch between those, because then you have abilities like, if the enemy gets closer, you can switch to melee and then knock them down, or root them and jump away with something called disengage. And then in range tray, you can shoot them from long range. Brigand Master Race. So They obviously have some promotion classes as well. They have the Archer, which is the basic super long range DPS. They can get up to, I think in late game, they can get up to maybe 65 meters range with their bow shots. They have. Thanks for taking the time to prepare all this for us. Yeah, no worries, man. I love to help people. So the Archer is high single target DPS from long range. The only problem with that is if you fight huge group fights, right? It can be super hard to single out people. They're great at running out on a flank and then shooting people that are out of position. But if your enemy knows how to move and position themselves correctly, the Archer is not as effective. Which is why it's not played that much. It's also a bit squishy, easy to kill. But in really big numbers, you could obviously make it work with like a special group of archers that just runs out on the flank and try and shoot people together. Then we have the Warden. Yeah, the camera zoom on the ranger is really weird. Yeah, so when you charge up bow shots, it automatically zooms in your camera, and that can annoy some people. Obviously, if you like shooting people with bows, you get used to it. But yeah. We have the Warden, which is the tanky version of the Ranger. You gain access to mail armor. By default, you have leather armor. They have talents that so they take reduced damage. They can actually be pretty hard to kill in the sense that if the Ranger's ulti is a lifesteal for 30 seconds. So if you combine that with taking reduced damage, being up in the faces of enemies, then they can be a bit hard to kill. But if you're looking for a frontline, other classes can do it better, like a Knight or a Myrmidon or Templar, which I'm gonna show later. But they can also crowd control quite well in the sense of they have a power called Dagger Spin, and with the Warden talents, you can then suppress, which is a form of silence in this game. You can suppress targets around you by just spinning, using that Dagger Spin. And then they also have some really good anti-stealth mechanics. You can buff your entire group with anti-stealth, so you can see stealth enemies nearby, which is also another reason to maybe have one Warden in your raid. So you don't get scouted and surprised, right? And then finally we have the Brigand. And this is kind of a special thing because you gain access. It says your role is melee damage, but you gain access to a stealth tray. So suddenly the Ranger can now go stealth, and you actually almost work as an assassin with traps. So you specialize in placing traps. Those traps then all have they explode, so they do AoE damage, and then they all apply a different dot in AoE, right? So you have a trap that applies bleed damage to targets in nearby. Then you have a trap that burns people nearby, and you have a trap that does nature damage nearby. How do I see the promotion classes like you do in class creation? Yeah, I spent a lot of time on just cutting all this out for you. So I'm sitting here doing it in my Streamlabs with overlays. So you get all the information you need. But yeah, the devs are gonna work on making that information more accessible in the future for you guys. Where was I? Oh yeah, Brigand. Brigand, you are like an assassin ranger, so to say, right? You go in, place traps, AoE dot people up, and then you have to peace out because you're pretty squishy in that sense. You have a cool mechanic though. Just as a ranger in general, if you use a trap called the fairy trap, the more targets you hit, then you gain barriers depending on how many targets you hit. So in that sense, you can be tanky. I would obviously then build Brigand towards having that you know, barrier bonuses. So for example, using Force Mage by default gives 100 barrier bonus. Makes you a bit tankier, so you can stay in the fight longer. And then finally, we have the last class, called the Templar. And a popular choice for Templar right now is Elken. Because the Templar has low mobility in the sense that you don't use dodge normally as a Templar. You would instead slot something called parry. And while parrying, you are immune to crowd control. It's the same as the classes that use shields. They can block, make them immune to crowd control. If people hit you in melee range with melee powers or AoE damage, then while parrying it procs a pop-up, so you then can punish people that are nearby. So let's say a Myrmidon runs up to a Templar, the Templar parries, Myrmidon hits the Templar while he's parrying, and then suddenly the Templar can now knock the target down in front of him. It's a very popular tank choice in that sense, because you then charge in, place your Divine Light, which is ground targeted healing, and then you just stand there and parry and take reduced damage. You're immune to crowd control, and if people hit you close, you can then slap them with your sword and knock them down. Templars only use Greatsword, two-handed sword. It's the only class that uses that. No one else can use a Greatsword. And let me take you through the promotion classes. You can go Vindicator, which is the damage version. So suddenly the Divine Light you place on the ground, it no longer heals, but it only does damage and then extra damage. Paladin, it's like a melee healer, so to say. You jump into the fight, you place your Divine Light healing, and then you heal targets, in that field. So using this for a bunker combo, just everyone stacked together, can be effective if the enemies don't have enough AoE damage, right? And then we have the Fury, which is the crowd control version of the Templar. They have a super cool promotion mechanic. So every time you crowd control someone, you gain more maximum health. So if you're really good at weaving in parries, knocking down people, and your Divine Light will also knock down people in the area you place, if you're really good at crowd controlling, playing Fury, then you can be super tanky in the sense that your health just skyrockets, So in fights, even if a Fury then has half HP, maybe that guy then has 10,000 health left, because he's actually capped on health through crowd controlling so much. Popular choice as a frontline, both Paladin and Fury, and super good at their jobs. Right. Okay. I know I had on the agenda that I want to explain the combat roles, the different combat roles in the game, but I kind of did that while explaining the classes, right? Some classes or builds, they are frontline, so you're a tank, you try and take as much damage for your team while controlling enemies. You have melee DPS like the Myrmidon, where you go in and do a lot of damage in melee. And what about the Bow Knight? Then you have the ranged DPS, obviously, and you have the healers, and then you have the stealth characters, which are the assassin, duelist, and then the brigand. Right. So, how about we get into the game? I guess before I go any further, do you guys have any questions to the races and classes?
Oh, I asked already in chat.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Alright, let's go to the next part, which is the basics of the game. And I'm just quickly gonna explain how the aiming, movement, and UI works. Remember, this is are the traps visible to enemies? Yes, the traps are visible to enemies. So you kind of have to outplay people in the sense that place them in the way the direction they're running. All right. So remember, this is also to cater to completely new people. I know some of you people that know the game, you know how everything works, right? I'm just gonna create a Myrmidon Minotaur here, and this is what you do when you create your character. You go into God's Reach, and you find the server of your region. Load. Here we go. So there's an EU server, there's a West server, East server, and Infected. Infected is, as you can see, it requires level 15, and there's a PvP in here. In these starter worlds, God's Reach, this is where you start out with the leveling up. So we're gonna go into the EU one, because I am from EU. Yumx, can you quickly go through meta classes, races, and promotion class? Didn't I? Wait, I already did that. Alright, so the first thing you do when you get in is Guinecean here, he gives you a quest, right? But we don't care about that right now. First I'm gonna explain aiming and movement. In this game there's no tab targeting, so you actually have to aim on enemies, you know. So if you know how to track people from Counter-Strike or shooter games, that obviously is gonna help you. But the hitboxes are way more forgiving in this game. So you aim all your powers on enemies, and then movement is obviously the default MMO movement. You know, jumps and. All right, calm down, Guinecean. Yeah, you have your dodge on right mouse button. You have your attacks on left mouse button, basic attacks here. That's also how you go into combat. You know, you start attacking or get attacked. And let me explain the UI really quick. We have up here in the left corner, this is basically the stats. So you can see my FPS right now is 80. Server SPK is basically the lag spikes. This is my MS to the server, and this is my MS like from home, right? So you can see that the connection is pretty good. We have the server up here, which server you're playing on. We have the kingdom, so it says live, Frankfurt server, God's Reach campaign, and then the zone you're in. So I'm in the Earth Temple zone. This is information you want to hide if you're streaming and you don't want to get stream sniped, like, right? So it also shows your location, the X, Y, Z coordinates of your location. So you can see if I move in a direction here, you can see it goes up depending on the grid. And that is because the map is like one big grid here, north, east, west, south. So if you ever need to explain exactly where you are, you can just say the location, right? And then people can turn around and then move that direction until they find exactly your numbers. Then we obviously have your health bar here. We have the chicken ticker here. So in this game there's actually hunger. If you reach 0, you stop regaining, I think it's like around 2 chicken tickers, you stop regaining resources. So if you were a healer, you stop regaining mana. In this case, as a Myrmidon, we have Fury as a resource, so we will stop regaining Fury, and that would kind of screw you over, because then you can't really attack. We have a glowing boy here in front of us. If we were to invite people, the party frame would be here. You can maximum be 5 in one group, but if you're in a guild, then you can, you know, it works like a faction, so you can heal people outside your group. We have the chat down here, some different. Are you recruiting? yeah, I think we're looking for one more person or something like that. Either way, the chat here, general chat, which is for everyone in the server you're in. The faction chat is for everyone in your faction. So if you're not playing a guild, you are assigned to a faction. Zone chat, whoever's in your zone, so whoever's in the Earth Temple that I'm in right now. Me chat is like proximity, so whoever's close to you, you can use this to say poo poo, and then everyone within like 200 meters can see that you said poo poo. I have a guild, so there's a guild chat, combat log, what happened to you, what you did, etc. Events chat, and I'll explain this later, but basically events are gonna happen while you're running around out in the out in the world, and some of them will be announced in the events channel, and then you can see like, okay, I can go there to do the fight these people because they are doing something right now. Man, look at that tornado of animations. All right. The thing I keep going into here is the inventory window, and this is also where you basically access your inventory, but also this is where you find your disciplines. So you can see, since I'm level 1 right now, my discipline slots are locked, and you gain access to those through your talents. So in here, so while leveling up, you progress through, and then for example here is the first minor discipline slot. So when you skill this one up, you unlock the minor discipline slot. This is where the second minor discipline slot is, so make sure you grab that while going through the talents. This is where the last one is, third minor discipline slot. And then when you progress even further, you can just see quickly here how big the talent tree is. When you progress even further, this is where you gain the major disciplines. So one thing to note is that major disciplines actually require, you can see here, it requires 5 talent points. So a lot of new people, when they level up first time, they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this. Oh yeah, oh, delicious, more crit, I'm gonna take that. And then suddenly they reach level 30, which is the max, and they don't have any more talent points. And then they forgot to grab the major disciplines. And major disciplines are super important, because every major discipline is gonna give you some extra passive powers and some extra, active powers. Dilbo Dabkins just rated us. Hello guys. Right, so super important to unlock your major disciplines or your discipline slots while leveling up, because you can specialize and customize your character this way. So you're gimping yourself if you don't do that. And this is the armor mitigation window. You can see how much resistance you have to the different types of damage. And in here you can see the traits you have. If I were then to, as I talked about earlier, if I were to pick the promotion class Battle Rager, it says here I gain the trait plate armor proficiency. So suddenly I would have access to plate armor, but by default I have access to leather and mail armor. And if you really want to dig into the stats, you can also go to this details window, because you can see just a basic overview here that strength for the Myrmidon gives attack power and damage bonus. Dex gives me crit and resist. But if I, for example, were a ranger, Dex would be in the top and say Dex gives me attack power and crit and resist, right? For a ranger, strength would only give damage bonus. But if you really want to dig into the stats, you go into the details window, and then you can see all the different stats there are in the game. And there's a lot of different stats, right? So if you come by a stat you don't understand, will you be explaining the different classes? I already did that. What's about? Go back. You can see there's a lot of different stats, right? Every type of damage has penetration stats, and there are damage multipliers, right? There are defense stats, lifesteal, barrier bonus, block bonus, you know, so many stats. So all you have to do is if you're ever in doubt about what a stat does, go in and find it in the details window and then mouse over it, right? And that's the same for crafting stats. It also will tell you how to, you know, what attribute to skill to become better at. Oh boy, 10 subs. Holy crap! Thank you. It also tells you which attribute to use when or to skill up to become better at your craft, right? So for example, blacksmithing here, it would say increase strength. And if you want to make sure you experiment better on the stats that you craft, you know, you go into intellect. And if you want to gain more experimentation points, so by default, you know, when you craft an item, at least advanced items, they're gonna be experimentation points you can use to increase stats. And you start out with low amounts, and then to increase those, you can either do it through skill training. So in the crafting tree here, you can see, for example, here you gain one more crafting experimentation point, or you can also gain experimentation points through, in this case with blacksmithing, it says increase your strength will also increase the stats, right? So stats and attributes, you know, there's a lot of tinkering here. Same with harvesting. Like an example is, if you create a harvesting character, you wanna have 133 intellect, because that exact number of 133 intellect will give you. Let me just find the stat. Where you be? I'm looking for crit. Oh, okay, so critical harvest amount. 133 int will give you 1 critical harvest amount, and you can see the cap is 5 for all types of harvesting. And what it does is, you know, when you land a crit while harvesting, you gain more resources. So obviously, you want to cap out critical amount, harvest amount when you harvest, because you want as much resources out of the stuff you farm as possible. Alright, that was the inventory window. We explained this over here. I mean, if you're ever in doubt on how to get to the settings and all this stuff, you press escape or your inventory key. Let me show you the spell book. So by default you get into this by pressing K. It will show you all your active passives right now. So you can see I have the active passives from being the Minotaur. I have a breakwall here, as we talked about earlier. I'm immune to stuns from the front. And then you gain, you know, stuff through disciplines and talents. I'm going to talk about more of that later. And then you can see this is your 10 power bar slots. And then you just drag stuff down where you want it, and then suddenly, you have to equip your starter weapons to use powers. Suddenly now, if I press T, I can use the Minotaur charge and run into people, right? The last thing about the UI here, or maybe I should also explain the other slots over here. So this is your mount slot. This is a recall power. You can see it has a long cooldown. It says 1800 seconds cooldown. This will teleport you back to your start temple, wherever you are in the world. If you ever played League of Legends, no wait, League of Legends don't have that. If you played Heroes of the Storm, the MOBA game, you can also, you know, teleport back. This is your ultimate power. So every class has a different ultimate power. In the case of the Myrmidon, we have a Raging Bull, where we instantly knock people down around you and doing a lot of small hits. Every ultimate power works in a way where it's kind of your panic button, right? So if you're ever super in trouble, that's when you use your ultimate. To gain or to make your ultimate ready, you can see it requires soul power. if you look right here while I mouse over it, it says soul power, that's the resource. And soul power is gained through either taking damage or doing healing. And yeah, it's basically your panic button, right? You have the retaliate, so if you're ever in crowd control, a pop-up on your screen will show this power and say retaliate. In my case, by default it's bound to R. So if you ever get stunned or rooted, it's gonna pop up, and then you press R, and then you get out of retaliate, out of the crowd control. It does consume stamina though. You can see here, stamina 65, so it takes 65 stamina, and you can see I have 104 stamina starting out. So you know it takes a good chunk of my stamina to retaliate. You can then use this get disciplines that reduce the cost of retaliation, or you can gain more stamina, that kind of stuff, right? But since sprint also requires stamina, or block requires stamina, you know, you have to keep an eye on your stamina bar. If you go in and you get stuck in crowd control and you don't have any stamina, then you just lie there and until the crowd control is over. And you don't want that to happen, obviously. You can see here, if I'm in combat and hold down shift, I'm sprinting, moving a bit faster, and you can see my stamina bar goes down up here. Yeah, so that was the entire... Oh yeah, you also have these extra slots here where you can put in consumables. No, I don't want to destroy that. Food, bandages, etc. goes into here. Maybe I want to eat a rotten apple, you know. Nom 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 nom. Yeah. So up here in the top of your screen you have a compass. So you use northwest, southeast, you know, to find your way in the world. As I said, if you look at the map, this way up here, that's north, this is east, this is west, and this is south. So if you ever need to run over to this direction, you can see it's northwest of you, and then you just look northwest. You can see up here, west, north, in between, and then just run direction. And obviously I can't run through this wall, so I would have to go out through that gate over there. Then we have I have to go open the inventory window to activate cursor mode, but you can see if you look up here in the right corner, now that when I remove the inventory, you can see it shows which temple I'm in, right? So if you're streaming, you want to cover that as well. You want to cover your compass, you want to cover your information up here, because all this information, you know, that's what stream snipers will use to snipe you. And stream sniping is very much a thing in this game. People want to kill you. It's a PvP game, right? There's another way to have more than 3 consumable slots now. Yeah. And then if you look down here in the bottom right, you can see there's what looks like a calendar, I guess. It shows the season that you're in. Oh boy, more subs. Thank you guys. And every season does something different. The seasons are more a thing when you get into campaigns, and I guess I'll explain that shortly now and in depth when we get to the campaign stuff. But seasons determines if it's harder or easier to harvest, and it determines if your how the visuals are. So if it's winter, everything's very blue and there's ice and frost and stuff. If it's fall, it's very orange, that kind of stuff, right? And it also, let's say a campaign lasts 14 days, then you take 14 divided by 4, and that's how long each season will last. But seasons are way more thing for campaigns, right? It will also, as I said earlier, it's harder to harvest stuff in winter because you gain reduced harvesting stats progressively, right? So if you ever want to harvest in a campaign, you harvest in spring, maybe summer. Then when it gets to fall or winter, it gets harder to harvest, right? See people looking at me here. All right. Holy shit, 100 viewers. That's awesome, guys. Right. So let's talk leveling. Wait, I had a screen prepared for them. Leveling, guys. You see? Leveling, new player experience, getting to max level. Right. So as you saw when I logged in, I started out this little Guinecean down here. He said, yo, what up? I have a quest for you. You should go this way. And then you just basically follow the quest line up here in your compass. There's going to be a question mark that says how far away it is. You can see if I... Right now it's showing nothing. If I turn my camera and it shows the question mark, it shows how far away it is. So 59 meters north. And then I run that direction, and then I have to talk to this big boy right here. Sentinel of Earth. Talk to the guy. I gain a level by that, and I'm the type of guy that don't have time to read quest text, right? If you want to, you can do that. You know, he says he actually explains a lot of the basic things, like attributes and skill points, blah blah blah. But I'm the type of person that just sees next and I just spam next, right? I want to go. All you have to do is just follow the follow the question mark. If you're ever in doubt of what you need to do in the quest, you have a quest log over here, and then it would tell you what to do in the quest. So if you're ever stuck in that sense, you know, it would tell you what to do. So this guy says, you know, train your talent points. I go into my talent points. Start from, this is where you start with your talents and you progress from left to right. And I place in a talent point, and then he says, good job. Run this way now, right? So this has recently been implemented in the game. The quest starting quest line here, and it's not finished. So the quest line ends you at about level 17. And as I said earlier, level 30 is the max. So when you're done with the quest line, it takes you through, you know, it takes you through the entire... What's going on? Why is it not loading? It takes you through the entire starting map here. Okay, whatever. Takes you through the entire starting map in this zone, and then from level 12, it'll bring you... It'll bring you into the next zone over here. And this is how you travel between maps. You use the rune gates, and they are very easy to spot in the map. There's going to be a huge beam of light if you're running around out in the world. And obviously, if we were in a campaign, it would be the names of the different zones here. But in the case of the starter world, it would tell you which, you can see it says 13 to 18. It will tell you which level is recommended for the zone. So this is where you would go after you're done with the first zone here. You go to this zone, you end up at around level 17, 18, depending on how many monsters you kill while doing the quests. And then the quest line is done. And then, you know, you're level 18, what to do? You run up to this zone here, Vanaheimr, it says 19 to 24, and then you go into the zone. There's going to be monsters, animals, stuff to kill. As a rule of thumb, kill stuff within 4 levels of your, of your level. So you kill, if you want to level up, you're 18, you kill stuff up to around 22, 23, something like that. Then you level on that stuff until you reach level 20, 23, 24. And then you stop, you know, the XP then exponentially goes down from how much XP you gain per kill, right? So when you then reach around level 23, 24, you recall again, you know, the power I talked about earlier. It would bring you back to this starter zone here. And then you go into this one. And so you can use the animation to bait out. You go into this zone and finish out your leveling. Go to level 30, right? And then when you level 30, that's when you are max level, and now you can enjoy the game. One thing to note is that if you have friends boosting you, they're like, oh yeah, we're level 30, let's just boost you. And you go into this zone as a level 1 or something. If the mobs get close to you, and they will switch target to low targets, low levels, right? If they get close to you, they're just gonna one-shot you. So you really have to be careful with how close you stand to them. What is that long name? Yeah, that guy had a long name. Yeah, so you're level 30, and now I have this screen. This is the next section. Is there anything you guys don't understand about the leveling and the UI? Now's the time to ask the questions before I go to the next one. No? Okay. All right. Let's
Omega lol.
Omega lol.
Yeah, we get.
You get it. Okay, that's awesome. All right. Yeah. Let's talk what to do at max level, right? So obviously you're level 30. You want to get out of the starter world, so you log out to the character screen. Seems out to me that the game has leveling at all if all the meat is at the max level. Yeah, I have also brought that point up, but at this point, you know, it's there to I guess give a sense of progression, right? Yeah, it's just like a tutorial, you know, it gives you the basic knowledge of the game, but since it's not done, and since information is quite hard to find about the game right now, that's why I'm doing this stream, you know. I'm going to take you from A to C. Right, so we have now reached max level. Bam, we reached max level, right? And now we want to go out in PvP. So a great place to start out with PvPing is in Infected, right? So you can see here, this requires minimum level 15 and PvP is enabled. The good part about the Infected is that it's very newbie friendly in the sense that if you get killed, people can't loot your inventory. Whereas if you go into the campaign here instead, this is where the big boys play. The Drex campaign here, PvP is enabled, and if people kill you in here, then they can loot the stuff in your inventory. They can't loot the stuff that you have equipped, but they can loot the stuff that you are carrying around in your inventory. So if you just killed a boss or something and you got some epic loot, and you're running to the bank, but then a little sneaky Guinecean pops up and kill you and chop your head off, then he can take all the stuff in your inventory, and you lost that stuff, you know. Then the only way to get it back is either kill him before he gets to the bank, or cry in general chat and hope he has pity with you. Right, so I'm in a guild, right? So obviously I'm just gonna go into the campaign and beat on people there. So we go into the campaign. And we're loading. No. That's exactly not the right reaction, Harvel. You don't do that. Alright, so we're in the campaign. And suddenly there's some more UI stuff here. And that's because guilds can accumulate points to win the campaign, right? This up here is called Conquest Points, and you can see it always shows the top 5 guilds. It shows the guild crests. You can see I obviously have some more gear here. Slap some people with a max character. You know, this is my build, whatever, right? And to win a campaign, you have to, if you look at here the leaderboard, and this is the seasons I talked about earlier, but to win a campaign you need to accumulate victory points. and these are they will be here. But basically, if you have the highest amount of victory points when the campaign ends, so when the campaign ends in 10 days, then you have won this campaign. What are those skills? I'll show you in a second. Once you join a campaign, are you locked to the campaign? Yes, exactly. So you're locked to the campaign. Let me just quickly show you this before I explain the rest. Your character is now locked into this campaign, and you can then unlock the character to bring it back out if you like. Okay, this campaign is too hardcore for me. I want to go back to Infected where people can't loot my stuff. Then it's good to know that you can unlock the character, right? And I'm going to show you here. So you can see here the character that is in a campaign will have this icon, the lock icon. And then to unlock it, you simply just press it, and then you fill out the pattern that it says, and you press confirm. But what it will do is it will unequip all your stuff and put it into the world bank in that campaign. So if you have some cool stuff on you in the campaign, as you saw, I had some like blue gear, epic gear, all the stuff will be put into the campaign bank. And in this case, the active campaign is Inulan. I go into here, and then all my gear would be in this bank, right? To then bring that stuff from the campaign into Infected or, you know, God's Reach or the beginner worlds, then I would have to use, you see up here, there's a certain amount of export tokens per campaign. So I would bring some stuff out. Let me just bring something that, yeah, whatever, right? You click on the stuff you want to bring out, and then you press export items, and then they get transferred from the campaign into your account vault. And then you can go into God's Reach, go into the local bank in God's Reach, and then take the stuff out. Thank you for the sub, Nebulae. Right. And then, as I said, there's a maximum amount of 200 things that can be in your account vault, and the maximum amount in a campaign vault is 100, right? If you then want to bring stuff from your starter world into the campaign, depending on the campaign, you know, there would also be import tokens. This current campaign, there's no import tokens, so everyone who has farmed stuff in God's Reach and Infected, blah, 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 can't bring anything in, right? So if you were to start in this campaign, you would be naked, and then you would have to farm everything in the campaign. Right, let me go back into the campaign. Oh, let me just show you quickly here, actually. So if we go into the campaign here, we can look at the completed campaigns. So these were the past ones that have been played out so far. And you go in and you check, you can check the leaderboard, right? So you can see here, this is the divine favor points I talked about. So you can see Winterblades won this one because they had 74 points when the campaign ended, so they were on top, right? And then you can see here with every season there's gonna be some different cards that you compete for. So if you were the guild that sacrificed the most Arakoi artifacts to the Ilara guard, then you would gain 11 points from this card this season. And I don't know who did that. Let me check. No one. I guess no one did that. Okay, whatever. So these bottom cards here, you know, they change and they are random depending. They change every season and they're randomly generated. So every season there's some new cards. Then when the season ends, the points are accumulated, right? And then you can see normally in the end, this is where the big points are accumulated. For some reason, the big points are here in the start. I don't know if it's just visually showing something wrong. But then up here, there's always the same campaign cards. So these count for every season, right? So every season, your guild or faction can earn between 1 and 5 points per sacrifice XP earned per member. Right, so if you sacrifice a lot of stuff to guards and gain XP that way, you know, This obviously favors smaller guilds, so it's easier to sacrifice 1000 XP with one guy instead of sacrificing for 1000 XP with 400 guys, right? And then there's always a building card. So when you take stuff, like let's go into this map here, you can see there are keeps and forts in every map, and guilds can claim these keeps and forts. If you then claim the keeps, you can build up buildings in the forts, and that's what the card here is referring to. Most rank 3 buildings. So you build a building, and that building normally starts at rank 1. It starts at rank 1, and then you can upgrade it with building materials. And I actually have a picture here with building materials. Right, so bim bam boom. Right, so these are examples of building materials. Metal ingots, timber, boulders, right? So it's not normal resources that you go and chop a tree and use that. You have to gain these building materials, and they are gained through either holding forts, because forts will every hour spawn a chest that will give some form of resource. It can be gold, it can be dust, it can be, you know, metal ingots, it can be timber, it can be boulders, right? It depends on which fort it is. But another way to also gain gain building materials is if you own a keep. Well, actually, you don't even have to own a keep, but there are pack picks out in the game. So these pack picks, you go out, you tame the pack picks, and then you escort them to a caravan. Refinery. So let's see, is there one in this map? Yeah, over here, right? So an example of where, for example, the pack picks with timber, they spawn normally in forests. So you would tame them in here. Each character can have 3 picks tamed at the same time. And then you would have to escort them all the way. Wait, you can't see it. Sorry. Alright. My bad. Dip, dap, doop. Alright. Right, so now you can see the mouse. Normally, pack picks with timber, they would spawn in the forest here. So you would have to go out, find them, tame them, and then escort them all the way over to the refinery. So this is a refinery icon. And then you turn the pack picks in at the refinery, and in exchange for that, you then gain building materials, right? And you can run those caravans without having, you know, holding anything. You can just do that, and then obviously you don't want to lose the materials, so you run from the refinery all the way down to a world bank. So every map has some type of world bank, and they're marked with this. And in the world bank, you can deposit stuff, so you don't lose it if you get killed. And then later, when you get back to your temple, depending on what faction you choose, you know, in the temple there's also a world bank, and then you can take the stuff out there if you need it there for later. Every guild, when you create a guild, you have to choose a god that you pray to, so to say. That's the RP element of the game. Refineries get camped. Some refineries get camped, yeah. I mean, if someone feels bored, you know, they're gonna camp that stuff. But as I said, when you create a guild, you choose a god as a patron, and then depending on which god it is, that also chooses which faction temple you start out in. So in our case, we chose, I think it was Archon or something, and Archon is one of the sun gods. So when we go into a campaign in Drex, we would start in the Sun Temple, and then other guilds where they maybe pray to Yaga, you know, that's one of the death gods, you know, then they start in Moon Temple instead. Right. Victory cards, unlocking characters, win conditions. I think I explained all that. Right, so let me log back into the campaign here. Now let's get to the PvP point of the game, right? So this is the major driver for the game. You know, it is a PvP MMO. Hello, boys. And obviously, oh look at my FPS, delicious 120 up there. PvP is what you mainly do or want to do in this game. And there are different things that can drive PvP. Namely, as I talked about earlier, there's the events chat here. So you can scroll through chat windows by pressing tab. So you get to the events. If you run around and roam, you kind of want to have this events chat open, because in case something happens in the map you're standing in, like this, it would say, so this is an example of when a king, which is a boss monster, if that spawns in the map you're in, it would say which parcel on the map it's on, right? And it says blah blah blah, spotted near that location. And then you have to rush over there before another guild gets to it. You need to stream more often. Another example is when other players kill guards. So guards can be at an outpost. Like, let me just show you here on the map. Every map will have outposts like these ones here. So this is an example of a guard outpost. If you were to take this outpost as a guild, then that outpost has a buff, and you then can get that buff, right? So you can see the Black Hand Order owns this outpost right now. So as I said, if then someone attacks that kills the guards there, it's gonna get announced in the events chat, and then you see, okay, this person just killed the guards over here. I'm gonna go over and kick his ass, right? And then the last form of events that are announced are when the pack picks, as I explained earlier, when they spawn somewhere in the map, right? So you can see the example on the screen is a lot of stone and a wood pick spawned in those locations. Now I know where to go and find them, and then I can gain building resources out of that. Right, so another thing that drives PvP, apart from running around to the Wartribe camps and killing bosses, is obviously taking over forts and keeps. And to take over a fort or a keep, you have to wait for the fort and keep to open up. So in our case here, we have the fort. Every day there's a siege schedule. So you go into the map and you go into the siege schedule, and you can see what opens and when it opens. We can see here at 7:30, this fort opens up, this fort opens up, and this keep opens up. And then basically they are open for an hour, apart from the keep, but the forts are open for an entire hour, and then the guilds that want to hold that fort has to stay there, or capture it right at the end of the siege window. And then basically right now, every day there's because we have merged the European and the American community into one server, then you can see, for me, there are 3 fort windows in European prime time, 3 siege windows, and then if I were to stay up in the middle of the night, I can then 2:30, 3:30, and 4:30 participate in the American sieges, and then fight the American guilds. And there are different ways to capture these forts and keeps. So if we were to capture a fort, this is an example of a fort, a smaller fort, you would then have to run inside the fort. And then you can see here on the picture, there's an orange circle inside the fort. And every fort will have guards in them. So obviously you have to kill the guards first to capture it. And then you would have to stand in that orange circle to then turn it over to your guild or faction. And that's how you capture forts. And then you would have to do that obviously in the window that is open, and then you would have to hold it until the end of the siege window, and then you would have that fort until it opens again next day. Another thing is obviously the keeps. We have a small version of a keep and a big version of a keep. Every keep starts out with being not built up. So like on this picture you can see the walls and buildings not built up. Every keep then has plots where you can build the buildings up, as I explained earlier, with the building materials. Examples of buildings you can build in the keep are, harvesting buildings. You can build barracks, so you gain guards that fight for you, and you can also like caravan stuff. There's a lot of buffs to gain, and you can also build up a bell tower. If you build a bell tower in your keep, that's how you accumulate points towards what is called conquest points. You can see that in here. So this doesn't mean that if Winterblades were to finish the campaign while being first in conquest, let me take that one off. You see in here in the conquest points, if Winterblades were to finish with most conquest points, that doesn't mean they win the campaign. What matters is the victory points, right? That's how you win the campaign, but leading in conquest points, that basically counts for some of the conquest cards here. So sometimes there's a card, here, this one, top power. So every season, whoever is top 5, they get points for their capture points. So when this season ends, you can see Winterblades are first with 53,000 points. They would obviously gain 5 points from the power card here. So when you then want to capture a keep, first thing you have to do is at least when keeps start out, they are neutral when the campaign starts out. And then to capture that keep, you have to plant a Tree of Life seed. And to get that seed, you have to buy it from the vendor over here. You can see it's marked with a Tree of Life icon. And you go over here and you say, yo, what up? And you can see the Tree of Life seed costs 75,000 gold. So this is a bit of an investment if you want to, capture a keep, because this is the gold requirement to plant it. So then when you finally get to the keep, there's going to be a Tree of Life seed, where you then, put that seed in and build up the tree, and that's how you capture the keep. If the keep is already taken and you have to take it from another guild, first you have to kill them, you have to destroy win the siege, and then in the end you have to bring that seed to the middle of the keep and then plant it, right? And then since you have to bring it in your inventory, obviously the people can kill you and loot the seed from you, etc., right? So it's it's a bit of an investment to get a keep. So the way you win a siege, the way you win a keep siege is that either the defenders, they wait 15 minutes, and then the plague trees are going to spawn around the keep. Don't know if I have a picture of a plague tree. I forgot that. Well, there's going to spawn 3 between 1 and 3 trees around the keep, and the defenders just have to run out and kill those trees, and then they have successfully defended. Or if they can kill those trees because there's attackers out there protecting the trees, then the defenders would have to wait out the time, right? As an attacker, you want to defend those trees so the defenders don't finish the siege, and then you would have to go inside the keep and kill these wards. So as an attacking faction, you have to fight your way in, kill the defenders, kill the guards, and get up to the to the wards that are well defended. And the wards look like this. The big keeps will have 4 wards. The smaller keeps will have 2 wards, and you would have to find them inside the keep. They are, you know, placed around the keep, so inside buildings and stuff. It's not random. They always at the same location. But I don't have a layout right now that shows exactly where they are. But you know, you'll figure that out when you get to that. Right. So if you successfully kill all those wards as an attacker, then you just have to kill the Tree of Life in the middle, and then the Tree of Life obviously would turn into a seed again, or a sapling, and then you can plant the seed, build it up, capture it. It's now yours until it's then you know, it's yours, and then it becomes siegeable again in like 2 or 3 days, and then you have to protect it, right? But as I showed here, normally a keep will always start out being unbuilt. Is this a PvP game? Yes, this is very much a PvP game. The keep will start out being unbuilt, and then you as a guild or faction, you have to work together to build up the keep. And what you normally want to do first is you want to get some walls, right? So you turn it into this beautiful keep instead. Oh, so pretty. Look at all the arrow tower, archer towers, and blah blah blah, right? So you obviously want your keep to end up with walls, so people can't just walk inside and beat you up while you're in there. And the way to build up walls is you have a war table inside the keep that looks like this. You go up to it, and then it requires a certain amount of stone, wood, and ore, and then you put that in, and it builds up the walls, right? And then you can also put in sacrifice stuff into the keep to upgrade the walls rank and the guards rank. By upgrading them, you obviously then increase the HP of the stuff, and that it makes it harder for people to break into your keep. Useless towers. Right, and then almost every piece of the wall is then destructible. So when an enemy comes and try and attack you, you know, you have to make sure you see where they're coming from. They would have to use they can damage the walls with basic attacks or spells, but it takes a long time to break it down, right? So instead you would wanna as an attacker, for example, you would wanna use siege weaponry. And here's an example of trebuchets you can use from long range to break down the walls.
Shoot yet, please.
Oh, let me just bam. Don't know if there's sound
Shoot yet,
on.
please.
I'm ready.
For a second.
Hey,
3, 2,
Is there sound on the video?
1. Shoot it. Left of the gate, ballista. Left of the gate.
All right. Yeah. So that was a fun moment we had from another campaign. You saw we had lined up a whole big amount of trebuchets, and we it's loud too. Yeah. Well, you get the message. And we had lined up a whole bunch of siege equipment, and then we shot at the same time, and it looked awesome, right? But that's how you break into a keep, break a hole, and then you obviously have to go in, kill the wards, as I explained earlier, to capture that keep. Right. PvP, sieging. Right. So. Now let's talk about how you create your build. So you can see my build right now. I have obviously some talents here. I have spec'd into the radical. I'm a DPS on this cleric here. You know, depending on how you use your talent points, you make sure you reach a certain amounts of stats. And then you also have to pick some disciplines. And normally the way you build your character is that you look at the strengths and the weaknesses of your class and promotion class, and then you either choose to try and eliminate the weaknesses or you try and enhance the strengths, right? So yeah, the only thing you can reset is the disciplines. You just drag them out and delete them. The talents you can't reset. They are locked, so if you were to reset talents, you have to level a whole new character. Same thing with your attribute points. Right, so in my case, I looked at my character, and since I'm a ranged DPS, I'm like, oh boy, I do a lot of DPS, let me just enhance that DPS, right? So I picked, in this case, Force Mage, which then gives me some powers here. So for example, kinetic boost increases my damage bonus by 20% for some seconds. And then I also picked Illusionist, which is glamour weapon, 150 attack power, you know, just a lot of offensive stats, so I just hit as hard as possible. So, you know, then you would look at your character, as I said, look at the strengths, weaknesses, decide which way you want to go. Do you want to try and make it a more balanced character? Do you want to try and just specialize into something like DPS or healing? And then you look at all the disciplines that you buy here. And then every discipline is obviously gonna tell you what they can give you. We have a discipline library that is not fully up to date, but it'll give you a good sense of what the disciplines can do. You can find that on our website, vanguardcrowfall.com/disciplines. And yeah, it'll show you, like, for example, because the problem is, you know, like right here I'm mousing over Banshee and it says Banshee will attack, reduce movement speed, right? But you don't know exactly the amount of percentage movement speed that you reduce it by, right? And you would only learn that by buying the discipline, equipping the discipline, and then going into your spell book and actually looking at the powers that you gain. Plague 3 screenshot at Discord if you need it. We're past that now. Right, so, you know, you create your build by finding 2 major disciplines and finding 3 or 4. Some races have a 4th, a minor discipline. And then you can see, like, there's actually not that many great options for minor disciplines. There are some defensive ones, there are some offensive ones. And yeah, that's about it. We have a guide on also the available or the viable minor disciplines. I guess I'll just quickly post that in the chat. Let me see here, guides. Yeah, so we have a little, this is made from an older patch, but those still apply, right? So I linked it here. I guess I'll also quickly show it on stream. Where are we? We are here, right? So we have a little minor discipline guide that basically tells you which are the good offensive ones, what they can give you, what are the good defensive ones. This is incorrect because, as I said, it's an, you can see when we made it last year. So this one has been nerfed since, but mostly all of it is up to date. These are the support minor disciplines, right? Can we yoink your guides? Yeah, just yoink it all you want, man. Right. And then it's just about finding the build for your character. You know, you have an idea of what you want to do, and then these disciplines can help reach that idea. So then there's 2 different ways of theory crafting builds. It's one is, you know, you build your character around the idea you have yourself, and then there's the way that we like to make characters is in our guild, is that we think about, okay, what group does this character go into, right? And then what's the role of that character in that group, and how do we make sure that everyone in the group shines, you know, and covers all the weaknesses that group potentially would have. So a cool example is, for example, this one. So Escape Artist. What this major discipline does is it gives you a power called Free Action. If you look down here, when I mouse over it, Free Action. So that's a group buff, and it makes your entire group immune to crowd control for like 5 seconds, and it also cleanses crowd control. So obviously this power is super good if you're playing in a group like that has to push in. Like, so a frontline group having at least one Escape Artist is almost mandatory, right? So you're like counting down 3, 2, 1, let's push this direction. Then whoever has Free Action on their bar, they're gonna pop it, and then your entire front line can't get CC'd for 5 seconds while they're charging in, you know, making it way more effective. And that's kind of the mentality we use in our guild to create builds, is that, you know, we look at, okay, what can we do to make this group shine? An example as well could be Plague Lord, right? So Plague Lord is an anti-healing major discipline. It gives you powers that reduce healing taken and healing done. And if you were to use this on, let's say, a front line, you know, like the knight that I explained earlier, you can pull people in and then instantly make sure they take less healing. And then, as I said, the knight is the playmaker, so you kind of just set that kill up for your entire team. You know, you serve that kill on a silver platter. So it's just about, you know, taking the time to understand what the disciplines to do does, you know, and then talk to your group, because this is very much a group game. Talk to your group about, okay, what can we do to make each other shine? You know, if one guy takes, for example, Troubadour, they have a song called Requiem, as you can see here. It says increase enemy damage taken. Okay, so maybe we should have one guy with Troubadour that then increases the enemy's damage taken, so our entire raid does more damage to those targets, right? And that's kind of like the passive abilities are important in CF, yeah. So that's kind of like that way of thinking that we use when we create builds in our guild. And then obviously if you then just copy one of our builds, maybe we have a very specialized build for one person and you copy that as a single person, it might not have the same effect, right? Because we made that build towards that specific task for that person in that group, right? So that's something to consider. Then obviously, if you are making a crafting character, this is also where you find the crafting major disciplines. There's one for each profession. I'm gonna cover that in a second, in a moment. And you know, then there's also crafting minor disciplines here. They're always on the bottom row here, and they just increase crafting stuff and give you more access to crafting. Right, so that was talents, disciplines. Now we're gonna go to PvE. So since we have just recently had a full wipe, everything was wiped. Passive skills and inventory, everything was wiped. And then since passive skills are wiped, that means crafting is not very strong right now, because the main way to gain crafting stats is through skill training. And if, you know, your skill training is low, you don't have many crafting stats, and then the stuff you craft is not very strong. Have you also shown the exploration discs? Oh yeah, so also every character has 2 exploration slots. This are for harvesting, which you buy in here, you know. If you also want a skin on your character, you know, you put in Skinner and you use that for harvesting. But as I said, crafting is not that strong right now, so the main way to get gear right now is you go out and kill Wartribes. Because Wartribes will drop random generated gear, like this one, right? So Every piece that drops has random stats and a random quality. And then what does he want to give me? Bird's nest. Nice. Alright. But that's the main way to get gear right now, is that you go out into the map. Let me show the map here. So this is where I am right now. You can go out into the maps, and then in every map there's gonna be some type of camp. So you go here, and then if there's Wartribe camps, which, you know, are Wartribe NPCs, you can kill these. There's gonna be normal versions, they're gonna be elite versions, they're gonna be captains. So I'm just naming them in how hard they are to kill. Then there's gonna be chiefs, and then there's gonna be kings. And the kings are like the bosses, right? And obviously the loot dropped is gonna increase with how hard the NPC is to kill. And that's the main way, you know, that people generate gear, and also how you generate a lot of PvP content is you go out into the world, you go look in these camps, you know, look for bosses to kill, and then other guilds are gonna be there by default, because everyone wants to get good gear, right? So you fight over the gear, kill the bosses, have a lot of fun, and that's how you. Sorry. Some guilds obviously have more people than other guilds. That's just the nature of the game. There are no fair fights, basically. You know, if you get run over by 10 people and you're only 2 people, that happens. You know, next time watch out for those. Like, look at your surroundings and run away if you see someone, if you can't beat them, right? That's just the nature of the game. There's no fair fights in that sense. Right, so that's how you get your gear currently. Later, when skill training then catches up, you know, in crafting here, so we have skilled all the way through here, and then we have gotten into, let's say, blacksmithing, and we have gotten a bunch of stats in here. I think it's around when you reach like the inner circle of all these talents, that's when crafting can start to compete with the gear that drops from Wartribes, right? So that it takes some time to get there, and that's just gated by time, so to say. Yeah, so another thing you then want to do in late game is that you want to upgrade your vessel. So people might ask, what is a vessel, right? A vessel is your character, which is, it's kind of the body of your character. In lore-wise, you are a crow, an eternal crow that travels from body to body, and you know, that's your characters, right? So let me show you here a nice screenshot here. You can see there are better tribes objectively besides difficulty level. No. There used to be some that like dropped, has a higher chance of dropping bows, or has a higher chance of dropping, you know, blah blah blah, right? But everything can drop from every tribe. So these are vessels, right? You can see in the left side, everyone just starts with a default vessel, which is what we call a white vessel, and that's the bonus stats you gain when you just create a character normally, as we did earlier. And then through necromancy, you can actually craft better versions of your body. And then that quality can go from all the way from green up onto legendary, right? Depending on the resources you use. And crafting a vessel means you have to create a new character using and consuming that vessel, and then you have to level that vessel character all the way up to max level again, right? So it's not just you crafted a vessel and now you just eat it on your current character. You can't do that. You have to create a whole new character with that vessel. But then, as you can see here, your character would then start with all these extra stats that is crafted on the vessel. and you can see you can actually gain a lot of stats. And that's something, you know, you do to optimize your characters in late game. You know, you also can, not only for combat characters, but also you can make them for harvesting characters and crafting characters. You know, everything can be optimized in this game because there's so many different stats, and that's, you know, what you spend your time on in late game. White vessel to green vessel has a huge stat boost. Yes, so that's one of the biggest bonuses you can get early game, is whenever you reach a point where you can craft vessels, that's when you want to do it, right? Because as you can see, the difference between white and green is huge. It's a huge stats boost, you know. But to craft vessels, it's a long, hard, not hard, but it takes some time, right? Because you have to go harvesting for minerals, and you have to be multiple people to harvest the mother lodes to gain those minerals. You have to harvest specific minerals, and then you have to turn those minerals into ambrosia, and then you have to go harvest body parts as a grave digger, and then it has to be the right body parts, and then your necromancer then has to use those body parts and, you know, craft the body parts, and then finally you can craft your vessel, right? So it's a long process, and it requires a lot of different people, and it requires skill training. So you need a specialized necromancer to actually gain some good vessels out of it. Oh yeah, and so, and then for example, if you finally, or when you finally manage to craft a vessel, let's say I crafted a blue vessel, then that vessel will require blue versions of a discipline. So suddenly the disciplines that you buy over here from the vendor are not good enough anymore. You can't equip those anymore on a blue vessel, because these are white quality, right? So you would have to go out into the world and kill something called thralls, and then special versions of a thrall, they are named after the discipline, right? So you would find a thrall called Shieldbreaker Thrall, and then you go kill that guy, and he would drop a blue soul for the discipline called Shieldbreaker, and then you would have to craft that discipline to then equip it as a blue version, right? So all that optimization takes time with your characters, and that's why it's a very good time to get into the game now. Is because it's so easy to just level up a character, use the white disciplines, you know, farm some trash gear from the Wartribes, and then you actually have enough to be competitive in the game right now. Compared to in half a year, when everyone has skill training and everyone has vessels and crafted gear, you know, then it's harder to get into the game. And yeah, you also need a lot more XP to level up those higher quality vessels. Good point. Right, and then finally, I'm just gonna quickly go through the crafting part. Harvesting is kind of self-explanatory, you know. Wood cutting, you cut wood. I mean, mining, you mine ore, right? Whatever. So crafting, you always have to go to a station, and crafting then requires different components. Let's say I want to make a weapon grip. Can I see anything here that... Okay, well, I don't have a crafting discipline on right now, so I can't see all the recipes, but obviously if I were to equip the woodworking major disciplines, I would see all the woodworking recipes here. Can you show how you can make the discipline? Yeah, and as Nebula say, they are working on implementing a catch-up mechanic, so people are not that far behind on skill training, you know, so they have a faster time catching up to the guys that have been playing the entire time. So in here, yeah, I can't even show you because I don't have the discipline equipped to see the recipes, but normally if you were to craft those blue disciplines, you would do it in the rune crafting station. and then you have some different components that you then acquire and combine, and then you craft a blue discipline, right? But for example, if I were to craft a piece of armor, an example is, for example, a mail armor. I can't show you here, but a mail armor would require some leather components as well, right? So even though you are specialized in blacksmithing, you also need a leather worker that helps you with those components to then craft the final piece of armor. So in that sense, you know, you need to cover all the different crafting disciplines apart from stonemasonry, which is not useful right now, but cover all the crafting professions, because a lot of the crafting needs stuff from the other professions, right? And since only one account can only train one line at a time, then, you know, in our guild, for example, we have one account for each crafting profession, so we can craft everything. You know, alt accounts, right? Are vessels a one-time use? Yeah, the vessels are one-time use. And that's basically like the basics of the crafting. You know, then when we get further into crafting, you want to start optimizing your crafting stats, you know. That, for example, when you craft an item, there's only 10 experimentation pips in one line. So at least getting 10 experimentation points is you know, needed to fill out one single stat. And there are some guides on the video on the YouTube. I think Andres has made one where he goes a bit further in depth into crafting. Right, and I think that was basically, you know, the gist of what you can do in late game. As I explained, you know, it's very much about PvP, the main part of the game. But to have an edge on your opponents, you know, you wanna also craft some great stuff. So, boys in the chat, do you guys have any questions that you feel like I haven't answered?
Yes. How many people do you need in a group to be able to like have enough people to like have all the crafting shit?
How many people you need in a group to cover all crafting? Well, in the case of our guild, we have 2 people controlling, you know, 8 accounts. So we have 4 accounts each. Right. So, you know, unless you want to delegate all the work onto different people, then, you know, maybe a 10-man guild is normally the starting size of being self-sufficient. Yeah. Did you hear my answer?
I see.
Yeah. Actually, I'm just gonna answer you here in Discord. So.
Delay.
Yeah, delay. Yeah.
But yeah, like a 5-man guild or something will be like required trade then.
Well, I mean, we started out as 5 people in our guild, and we just had all those alt accounts to make sure we could craft. But yeah, it is way easier just to then, as 5 people, go out and farm gold and then buy the stuff you need from other guilds if they want to sell it to you.
Uganda as a country is not known for its GDP. Just saying that, like, we need some fucking trade partners, and I don't know how you get about doing that in like this game. Like, you just fucking announce it in global or something.
Yeah,
Any
so
keys? Try hard.
so there's also EKs, Eternal Kingdoms, trade hubs, you know, where people sell stuff in there. I know Winterblades, one of the big guilds here, they have made their own trade hub. It's called Aram's Traders, and you basically just you go into the Eternal Kingdom list and you browse in there and look for public EKs there, and then also in this campaign, for example, if we go to the this is the neutral city. People can also place vendors in the neutral city.
I see.
Let me see if I can.
Is there a way to know like what's being sold at a specific EK, or you just have to like guess?
Yeah, you just have to go into the EKs and check the vendors, because it can be anything in the vendors, right? It's up to the people.
And apparently they can like turn on PvP and yoink your loot or something as well.
No. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh.
they can. in EKs they can.
Nice.
So if you go
Nice.
there with your gold in your inventory, they can turn on PvP and.
Feels good, man.
Camped,
love
hold
that.
W.
Love that shit.
So if you make your own trade hub and bait people in there, you know, it might not be that popular after a few ganks.
I mean, it's just like public knowledge that there's been PvP in there, or like,
No,
maybe
it shows
and actually.
it shows that
Okay.
it's enabled.
Okay. I see.
So as you can see on stream, this is inside the neutral city, which everyone can access from their starting temple, Polynesis in this campaign. You go in here and then you can see all the vendors that stands here. So the guild Wolfhaven here has a vendor that sells pretty cheap, you know, weapons and whatever else they want to sell, right?
Amazing.
So that's also a way to gear up, is just farm Wartribes, because every Wartribe monster is gonna drop some form of gold, and then just farm gold and buy stuff, right?
In my experience, all the Wartribes are fucking camped by people.
Yeah, so there's
You just fucking die.
there's a lot of
Even if you
people
stop
farming that stuff, yeah.
24/7, dude. Feels good.
Yeah.
Rolling in sub 4 people, it's kind of hard in this game, in my experience.
It is kind of hard starting out with
So,
a low amount
do
of
you have
people.
any recommendations for like small groups?
Yeah, so one group I know that has been pretty successful being that small is, for example, you play a lot of those slayers, you know, the rats that are stealth,
Yeah.
and then you just, you know, roam around and gank as 5 people, right?
Yeah,
Any
pirates.
non-furry options?
Yeah, so what was that, Shanks?
Any non-furry options?
Non-furry options? I mean, assassins, I guess, but they are just not as successful
Yeah,
at ganking.
Sure.
You could also just go, you know, a lot of pit fighters, because they're hard to kill.
True, that's if you can
Classic.
get away, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's that there are some options out there. It's just about exploring and then finding out what you find is fun.
I would assume that fucking casters are not the best for these kinds of small groups.
No.
Yeah, because they have like maybe lacking mobility if you're not like rocking high elf.
Yeah, I mean,
RNG.
yeah, I mean, Confessor High Elf can work for that kind of stuff because they are so slippery and high mobility, right? So there are some obviously some options there. It's just about finding. Then you also have to look at your disciplines and then you know, build towards if you want to gank or if you want to be ready to run. You know, there's for example a major discipline called Bard that can increase the movement speed on of your entire group, right?
That's pretty good, yeah. All right.
Overall
Thanks.
group composition is a really big deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you really have to think about how you compose your group. Like in our guild, we almost only play in pre-made groups, right? So we've made the groups and then you know, made every single build in that group towards the group's purpose.
So that's gonna help with like small like group.
Yeah, I mean, even as 5 people, if you compose like if you have 2 healers and then you know, maybe a single front line and then 2 DPS, that's a good starting point. because then the front line can always jump in first. The DPS can then focus on the same target, kill stuff. 2 healers can then, then you would have enough healing to outlast some other enemies, right? I mean, 5 people can kill 5 experienced people can kill 10 inexperienced people pretty easily because of the focusing and trading of cooldowns, right?
Fucking football composition.
True.
Can I ask also a classic question, LW?
Yeah.
Can you quickly go through the meta picks for races for each class, and probably for harvesting and crafting if possible?
Okay. Let me just quickly do that.
Like really quickly for what? For future purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we made a tier list from a few patches ago. Let me just find that. We have a tier list on our website, and some of this still applies. Let me show it on stream here.
Here it is, PogChamp.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure how relevant that tier list is to anymore.
I mean, if everything is covered in tier list, then probably you don't need to go through everything.
Yeah, but this is from like an old patch, right? Some of
Yeah.
it still applies, but let me just quickly do it manually. Tell you super quick what the we're gonna delete this guy. So this is also how you delete characters. Bam.
Speedrun it so we can fit it in a clip or something.
Here comes the speedrun, yeah. So for champion, you either
And
want to
ship it to XQC.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, champion, you either want to play Centaur or Minotaur. Cleric, you either want to play Centaur for extra support power, you want to play Half Giant for extra healing mod, or you want to play Stoneborn for extra personal healing, so you're more defensive, or you want to play Elken for extra crowd control with the charge. Knight, you either want to play Half Elf, High Elf for the mobility as a swordsman, or you want to play Guinecean, also for the like weapon damage, or you want to play Centaur for the armor break, you know, so since you deal physical damage, right? For the Confessor, you want to play High Elf almost every single time because of the mobility, and they have like increased crit damage and higher intellect, you know, more damage, right? For the, let's see, Druid, you want to play most of the time, you want to play Half Elf if you're the DPS, and if you're healer, you want to play Druid, Wood Elf, sorry. And if you are the Archmage, which is like the 3rd promotion class, you want to play Fae, because Fae has that double jump ability, so basically the Archdruid places orbs on the ground and then explodes the orbs, and the orbs are invisible to enemies, so you kind of want to get up to a place where people can't see you, place a trap, and then explode the orbs, and then instantly kill people if you have enough in the same place. So Fae is really good for that because you can double jump up, maybe stand on the roof at an off angle or something like that, right? Frostweaver, most of the time you probably want to play High Elf just because of the mobility. It's kind of the same deal with the Confessor, you want to be mobile as a ranged DPS. In the past you used to play Wood Elf because it was so easy to just blink into people and then AoE with your eyes, but the nerf to Wood Elf only having 1 dodge, then you can only dodge in, you can't dodge out again, right? So that kind of ruined that. Assassin, if you finally decide to play Assassin, either High Elf for the extra dodges or Nethari for the extra movement speed and stealth. If you want to play Templar, I would suggest play Elken, because Templar has that reduced mobility because they have to use parry instead of dodge. So by Elken having a charge as a racial, you wanna use Elken. Ranger, if you do decide to play Ranger right now, I would go Half Elf for the extra defensives through the racial healing. Late game, when you reach like the range distance bonus caps and stuff, I mean Elken could be an idea, or Wood Elf, just because Wood Elf you're so far away. As for example as a range as an archer, you're 60 meters away, and if people run towards you as a Wood Elf, you can just blink 20 meters in one distance in one direction, and then it's kind of hard to capture you. If you were to play Brigand or Warden as ranger, the tank version or the stealth version with the traps, Warden, I would go Elken for the charge, so you charge into people, or I would go Human, because Human by default has a 3% damage reduction. They just take 3% less damage. If you go the trap version with the Brigand, I would go either Half Elf for the passive healing, or it would go Minotaur, because you charge a lot into people to try and place your traps, and Minotaur having that extra racial charge where you can knock people down when you charge into them, then you can place traps on them while they're knocked down, outplay them like that, or you can and you're also immune to stuns from the front. Myrmidon, I would play Minotaur almost every time, because of the frontal stun immunity, because most of the time you do just charge into people and hit them. Stoneborn is not a bad option either, because of the increased healing taken, so it's easier for your healers to pick you back up. Half Giant is more of a late game pick when your offensive stats are super high, because the Half Giant has like increased bonus damage from racials. And what Duelist, there's only one race, obviously. Frostweaver, Myrmidon, Ranger, Templar, Knight. Yeah, that was basically everything. So there's quite some options for the different classes that can work.
Last question: can you use a water bucket to mitigate fall damage?
Actually, right now you can avoid fall damage by dodging right before you hit the ground, or holding block, or holding parry. So everyone can avoid fall damage right now. Yeah.
Also, can you tell about, I guess, crafting Harvester? Also, Harvester pretty...
Oh yeah, so
yeah,
Harvester, some of the races have some bonuses to harvesting, but a safe pick normally is at least later you would go a Duelist, and then you would get that 133 intellect, as I said, as a Harvester, to get that one extra crit harvest amount. But as you can see here with, for example, is it Half Elf? Yeah, so right now, early game, if you wanted to mine, I would probably go Half Elf, because they, by default, as a racial bonus, have increased mining stats, right? But if you want to mine, also you could also just pick a class with super high strength, or a race with super high strength with like a Half Giant, and you would almost land at the same stats. And then crafting, there are very specific combinations there for every profession. Let me just see here. At least early game. Late game, you kind of want to switch more towards maybe the Guinecean, because the Guinecean has like an extra ring slot, so when jewelry and that kind of stuff becomes a thing, having an extra ring with crafting stats on it is pretty good. But let's see. Okay, blacksmithing, that's a Stoneborn champion. For blacksmithing, Stoneborn champion, because Stoneborn gets that blacksmithing racial right here, and then Stoneborn champion because you want as much strength as possible for a blacksmith. So Stoneborn champion, as much strength as possible, right? Races or the class also has some extra attribute bonuses. So Dual crafter, you want to go human, ranger. So you can see human already has a dual crafting racial, and then dual crafting you mainly want to go dexterity. So you go ranger for, and then go full dexterity there. Leatherworking, you go. Let me see where that. Here it goes. You go Elken. Elken has leatherworking bonus as a racial, and then you go ranger because leatherworking benefits from dexterity. So you go full dexterity. Ranger is the class between the available classes for the Elken that has the highest dexterity. And then
When do you do jewels though? Like,
sorry,
I don't, like jewels. How do you do them? I haven't seen a single fucking ring besides the tutorial ring, to be honest.
jewelry. You make that
Yeah.
with jewel crafting, and you would
Okay.
have to work together to farm all mother loads while you have skilled up gem percent chance to then get gems to drop from those mother loads. And the mother loads requires at least 2 people to break down.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So it's also like a fucking late game.
yeah, it's some late game stuff, you know. Skill training
And
has to
belt.
reach a point where it makes sense to go for that stuff, and then sorry.
Belts. Is there even such a thing as like why do you have a belt slot or something?
Belt slot. So that's for stuff like you can find crafting tools, and then you put those tools in your belt slot, and then they buff up like your crafting stats or give you access to something specific. So
Alright.
that's also late game stuff.
And you get those as drops or you craft them?
You get them as drops, yeah, from animals or bosses. Like
Okay.
boss versions of animals and boss versions of Wartribes.
Okay, I see.
Do I need to explain the other professions as well? I mean, basically, you know, if you go back in the VOD, you can watch the different racial bonuses, and then you choose the class to that race that has the highest bonus towards the stat you need to go, right? I mean, Wood Elf is woodworking. You can see it has the bonus here, and then woodworking benefits from strength. If you go into the details window, as I showed while I was looking through the UI, you can see woodworking benefits mostly from strength, so you go full strength, and the class for Wood Elf that has the highest strength is the Ranger.
Also necromancy.
Necromancy, that's wait, which I think it's Nethari. Yeah, let me check. Yeah, it's Nethari, and then Necromancy benefits mainly from intellect. So on the Nethari, you want to go Confessor, not Assassin, not Templar. You want to go Confessor because that one has the highest intellect, right?
Other question, like food. Like I noticed food like gives different fucking attributes or skills or whatever. Like, is there a resource somewhere that tells us how we need to craft some like different foods and what they give, or
Yes,
I don't
let me send you a link here to Winterblades crafting combination.
know? Amazing.
They have spent the time on looking through all the crafting combinations, so you don't have to.
Wow.
And
Episode.
I'm gonna post it in the stream chat now. And you can see here there's a link, and you go in, and then in the bottom you can filter through all the crafting professions, and it shows you all the buffs. And then in regards to your question, or the combination, sorry. In regards to your question, you go in under cooking, and then you can see all the different food buffs. If you scroll to the right, you can see the effects. I guess I can just show it on stream so viewers can see it as well. And we're gonna take this one off there. Okay, so this is the yeah. So you can see like You know, there's basically food buffs for everything, also for crafting, also for harvesting. You know, so when you really want to maximize and min-max your stats, also make sure you take a look at the available food buffs when you're done with your talents and disciplines, etc. Right? And then food buffs last for 20 minutes, so you have to take that into account if you're gonna go out and fight.